Hey there folks, and welcome to the first video for Chapter 30, How Animals Move. Obviously, we have such a huge variety of animal life on this planet. We have some variety in how they move around, all of which can be specialized to the point where locomotion, movement, practically becomes an art form. Fish swim, and some swim so quickly they can be difficult for even our machinery to track. An example of this is that yellowfin tuna over there. Some fish even swim so fast they can launch themselves from the ocean's surface, and it almost seems as though they fly for a moment. Flying fish even get their name for their ability to do this. Some of the fastest animals on the earth run or walk, like the African cheetah, or this herd of wildebeest. Others crawl along its surface, like insects or lizards. And some are truly specialized, and they fly. A hummingbird beats its wings so fast that you can't even see them move. They'll beat more than 30 times a second just so it can hover in midair. All of these types of movement are because of how their limbs are built. And how a limb is built has to do with what kind of skeleton that animal happens to be sporting. When we look at the animal kingdom, we see three major types of skeletons. The first, the oldest, is the hydrostatic skeleton. Hydrostatic skeletons belong to animals that rely on water pressure inside their bodies to maintain their shape and their structural integrity. These are animals like earthworms, but also octopi, jellyfish, and slugs. Things that if they were to dry out, they would begin to wilt and sag, and they would not be able to maintain the size and structure of their body. Animals with an exoskeleton have more support, but the support is on the outside of their bodies. Snails are an example. So is anything that makes a shell that you'll find down at the beach. Clams, mussels, cowries, and anything that, well, has a nice crunchy shell and goes well with drawn butter. Lobsters, crabs, shrimp, but also any insect or other arthropod. Spiders, tarantulas, scorpions, butterflies, moths, ladybugs, beetles, you name it. These all have exoskeletons. An endoskeleton is a skeleton made from bone or cartilage. All chordates have an endoskeleton. Some chordates are vertebrates. These are chordates whose endoskeleton is specifically made of bone, but there are cartilaginous chordates whose endoskeleton is made of cartilage instead. So anything with a skeleton inside its body, from all kinds of fish, whales, any other mammal, whether it's marine or walks on land, birds, amphibians, reptiles, we all sport an endoskeleton to keep us upright and moving around. When we look at an endoskeleton, as we humans tend to be particularly interested, seeing as we have one, we break the skeleton down in two sort of subsections of our endoskeleton, the axial and the appendicular. Bear with me, I know that's sort of a mouthful. The axial skeleton supports your head, neck, and the trunk of your body. Your head, your neck, your ribs, your spine, and connecting down to your pelvis, but not including your pelvis. It's just the core of your body and your skull. The appendicular skeleton is all the bones that make up our limbs and the other bones that help connect our limbs to the axial skeleton. So all the bones of your hands and feet, of your legs and arms, but also the bones in your hips and your shoulders that help your arms and legs connect to your spine and to the rest of your axial skeleton. These bones, even though they're very tough, are living tissues. Remember, bone and blood are both living tissues. And this means that even though our bones, especially the femur, goodness, can be very hard, and very durable, they are living. They have a blood supply, they can be damaged, and they can heal. Our bones have several layers. On the outside of the bone, there's a layer of very, very dense, solid, compact bone. It provides a very hard, strong, durable protective layer to the outside of the bone. At either end of the bone, there's a spongy bone. At either end of the cap of the bone, there's the spongy bone right where the joint is. Spongy bone houses our red bone marrow, as you can see here. The gaps that you see here in the spongy bone, this is what healthy spongy bone looks like, by the way. The gaps that you see in healthy spongy bone provide places for our bodies to grow new red blood cells. And there's even access points, holes in that compact bone that's very, very hard, that let blood vessels, arteries, and veins into and out of the spongy bone so that new blood cells can get out of the bone. The center of the bone is filled in with yellow bone marrow, which is primarily made up of fat cells that have brought in and stored there by blood cells. Either end on the outside of the bone, on the outside of the compact bone layer, there's a layer of cartilage, which is a type of tissue whose job it is to cushion our bones and to sort of help lubricate the points where bones contact each other inside a joint so that bone does not rub on bone, which is excruciatingly painful, and that's actually what happens to folks who have things like osteoid and rheumatoid arthritis. Either their cartilage itself is being damaged or the bone is starting to degrade, but either way you get bone-on-bone friction in a joint, and it is extremely, extremely painful. Other than arthritis, one of the most common issues we have to deal with in trying to maintain our bones and keep them in good health so they'll serve us well is osteoporosis. Osteo means bone. So in medical science, any particular facet of a bone or bone study or any bone disease is frequently preceded by the word or the prefix osteo to clue us in that we're dealing with bones here. Porosis means exactly like you would think it means, that there are pores or holes in the bone. Like I said a moment ago, this is what normal, healthy, spongy bone looks like. As we grow older, we have an increased probability of developing osteoporosis, at which point all of those connection points that help reinforce the spongy bone and keep it strong enough to support us, those start to break down, and you end up with very large holes in the bone, in the spongy bone, and very, very fine connections between them. And what results is you have a bone that's almost hollow on the inside. You may still have a nice healthy layer of compact bone, but the bone underneath that is very delicate and very prone to breaking, and it's a very hard time healing. We're going to wrap up this video with a brief review of the most important types of joints in our bodies and what kind of tissue it is that holds us together. Bones are held to bones by a type of connective tissue called ligaments. They're strong, they're tough, they don't have too much bend or give to them, but there's enough for them to very, very strongly help hold the bones of our skeleton together. That's ligaments. The most important types of joints where you'll find ligaments, where bone meets bone, are the hinge joint. This is a sort of joint that you'll find inside your knee, your elbow, even your ankle, that where you can bend the bone, just where you can bend the joint and open and close it, but you can't really rotate it in a circle very easily. Ball and socket joints are very good at that, rotating in a circle. This is what lets you, say, do a windmill with your arm because your shoulder can rotate. It's also what lets dancers and martial artists perform such very high kicks from the hip, because the ball of the joint inside the socket is round enough and smooth enough that it has more play and it can move around. The last most important type of joint is the pivot joint, where there's only so much play, almost as though there's a rod and a wheel that can turn around the rod. Here's a really good sort of engineering animation of what that looks like. Places where you'll find this are in your atlas and axis vertebrae. Yes, in your spine. Your atlas and axis vertebrae are some very specialized vertebrae. They have a slightly different shape than the other vertebrae near them in your neck and in your spine. And because of this difference in shape, this is what allows you to turn your head, move your neck the way you can. All right? Some other important joints that you may find that aren't covered so well in your textbook are the gliding joint that we find in your shoulder. It helps you like shrug your shoulders. It also helps you move your hips around. And also the ellipsoid and the saddle joints. And these are primarily the types of joints that you'll find in between bones in your feet and in your hands and fingers. All right, folks, we're going to move into how these bones interact with our muscles in the next video. But I'll see you next time. Bye, folks.